write a short story, right? There's a few reasons, and especially if you're coming from the novel world, it might not be obvious what the benefits are. So just briefly, time is for sure a huge benefit. So I'm actually the parent of two small children. So my time is very limited. I work full time. I also have this career as an author. So I find short stories are very practical in terms of if you have time restrictions in your life, right? You can complete a short story draft theoretically in a few hours, days or weeks, and turn around edits pretty quickly. You can get feedback pretty quickly, and then you can submit it pretty quickly. So if you're short on time, a short story is a great way to kind of jump in, get something done, and then have that feeling of success, right? That dopamine hit of, wow, I finished a story. Even if it's not, the best story in the world, it's done. You can edit it. Like that is a really great feeling and can help get out of writer's block or any kind of rut you might be in. Some writers I know will challenge themselves to do a short story every week or every month, which sounds intense, but it is actually a really great practice if you could try this because it's a bit about quantity, right? If you write, say, 50 short stories in a year, 30 short stories in a year, chances are a few of them are going to be really great, right? They're not all going to be gems, but a few of them will be awesome. So, if you have the time, I do recommend trying to write short stories fairly frequently. Practice is another great benefit for short stories. They're a new form, right? For novel writers, for new writers, you can experiment within a short story really well. You can dive back into creative writing if you've taken a break, especially when it comes to novel writing, that can be very overwhelming, right? Sometimes we're kind of in the middle of novel writing and we're kind of sick of the story for a while. So doing a short story and then coming back to your novel can be what I think of as a palate cleanse. It can make me more excited to return to my novel if I take just a quick break, right? You don't want to get too distracted from a novel, but take a weekend break, do a short story, you can come back refreshed to your novel. Um, Fun, number three. So you can have a lot of fun with short stories because the time investment is so short. You can experiment. You can try new voices, new characters, new genres, point of views that might not do in a novel, but you can experiment with in short story. So you can have fun, you can get weird. And I've also heard from a lot of writers, and this has been my experience myself too. Sometimes I'll write a random short story and it turns into something longer, it turns into a novella or even a novel. This actually happened with my debut supernatural Western story. I started as short stories to explore the characters. I found a lot of people enjoyed the short stories, so I thought, let me put them on a longer adventure in a novel. And I never would have gotten to that point if not for the short story writing. And then lastly, connections. So after writing, publishing, submitting short stories, eventually you'll get published and you'll be able to connect with the publisher, the editor, and other authors in the table of contents. And this starts to build your network, especially if you're a new writer, right? So once you start to kind of get in that world, especially in social media, when the anthology comes out or the magazine issue comes out, there's a lot of excitement, people share it. So it's a great way to build your network as well. And then if you're already writing and publishing novels, it's a great way to find new audiences for your stories. And then a note here, the horror genre has been experiencing a resurgence. There's a lot of interest in horror books and horror film right now. So it's a great time to write horror stories. Reasons not to write a short story. Fame, which is never a reason to write, but I say this because there's really no like famous short story writers that people can name, which is pretty sad, right? If you say name a writer, it's almost always a novelist. So don't do it for the fame. And then also money. Short stories can vary in terms of how much you get paid for them. And I'll go over the different rates to expect. But in general, they're not going to make you a ton of money, not like a novel potentially would, right? Which is not even a ton of money typically. But in general, if you're trying to make money, short stories is probably not going to be the best way to do that. Um, and oh, I'll also add short story collections. So that's a book of short stories by an author. Also tend to not do as well as a novel. And I've heard that pretty consistently. I've also experienced it myself with my short story collection. I got good reviews. People love the collection, but it just, people in general, readers are not as interested in a short story collection as a novel, generally speaking.